What would you do if the world handed you nothing? No class, no power, no destiny, and then sent a fire-breathing dragon to kill you anyway? Because that is exactly where Soren's story begins, and it gets so much stranger from there. 7 days before the chaos, an earthquake swallowed a young man whole. He did not die. He woke up somewhere else entirely, a world where power is everything, class defines your worth, and the weak are trampled without a second thought. The man who woke up in that broken body called himself Soren, borrowing the name of the soul whose place he now occupied. A transmigrator, someone yanked from one life and dropped into another. And this one arrived with big plans. He was going to rise to the top, claim the most powerful class ever recorded, and make every single person who doubted him regret it. But first, the system had other ideas. 10,000 push-ups. That was the opening mission. Not a legendary quest. Not a secret power-up. 10,000 push-ups alone on a rooftop, while the rest of the school filed into the most important ceremony of their lives. The awakening ceremony happens at 18 for everyone in this world. You step up, the system scans you, and you receive your class, the title that determines whether you become a warrior, a mudge, a healer, or something rarer still. There are thousands of classes in total, split broadly into combat, support, and life categories. Combat classes are what everyone prays for. Life classes are what the unlucky ones go home crying about. By the time Soren finished his 9,997th push-up, the crowd inside was already buzzing. Someone had awakened as a berserker, another as an assassin, rare classes. Both of them, the kind that made entire families erupt with pride. And then Rosa stepped forward. Rosa from class 3-2, the girl everyone thought was perfectly ordinary. The scan announced her class and the room went electric, midge, an actual mudge. Within seconds, she was surrounded, people calling her name, offering invitations to dinner, begging for her contact information. Soren, finishing his final push-ups outside, remembered something sharp and uncomfortable. Rosa was technically his girlfriend. The original Soren had spent over a year chasing her, bought her an entire set of armor just to get a verbal yes. And now she stood in the center of that adoring crowd. Before he could even process this, Rosa turned to a boy named Leon and said the words, "Let's break up." Not to Soren, to the boy who had just announced himself as a rapid gunner. Leon, confused for half a second, simply shrugged and offered to take her to a seafood feast instead. Rosa agreed without hesitation. The crowd laughed. Someone suggested Soren go fetch tea and run errands since he had not even taken his test yet. Another voice, sharper, more contemptuous, cut through. Fewer than 20% of students at the Martial Academy ever awaken a combat class. Commoners like Soren, they said, almost always end up with trash-tier results. Soren stepped onto the platform and said nothing. Inside, he was burning with quiet confidence. He was a transmigrator, chosen by fate, destined for something extraordinary. The scan initiated, and then the announcement came. Soren's awakened class, none. The silence lasted exactly 1 second before the laughter started. Not a life class, not a support class, nothing. The system had returned an empty result on a human being, something no one in the academy had ever seen before. People were doubling over. Even the staff looked unsettled. Soren stood there, arguing with the system inside his head, demanding at least a combat class, insisting that transmigrators deserve better treatment than this. The sky answered instead. Dark clouds rolled in from nowhere, thick and churning, blotting out the light above the ceremony grounds. The crowd went quiet again, not from laughter this time, but from something closer to awe, a phenomenon. Someone whispered at first, and the idea spread fast. Only a truly powerful awakening could pull weather like that. Maybe Soren was awakening something so immense the system could not categorize it. And then the roar came, not from Soren, from above the tree line, descending fast, an ironclad fire drake, scales like burnt metal, body radiating heat that cracked the air around it. B rank. The announcement blared across the grounds, all fighters of B rank and above. Engage immediately. Students scattered in every direction. Everyone was shouting one name, Lena. Where is Lena? Only Lena could stop this. Lena was the Academy's greatest legend, a graduate whose name carried weight even at the highest levels of the Empire. She was visiting that day, and right now, no one could find her. Leon sneered at Soren through the chaos. Run? What a clown. Where exactly was Soren supposed to run? He looked at the drake. He looked at the system notification still blinking in his vision. 9,998. So he dropped back down and kept going. To every panicking student watching, it looked like a boy having a complete mental breakdown during a monster attack. He was still doing push-ups, while a fire drake circled overhead. 9,999. 10,000. The system chimed. Achievement unlocked. 10,000 push-ups. Constitution +1 granted. New skill acquired. Charge punch. The power of the charge punch scales with both the duration of the charge and the host's current rage meter. As a bonus, one free strike charged at 10 full years of power. Soren did not hesitate. He pulled back his fist and released it. A flash of red light tore across the sky. At almost the same moment, a woman descended blade first from above. Lena finally arrived, driving her sword straight into the fire drake. A thunderous boom. The drake crashed to the earth and did not move again. The crowd erupted. Lena, she obliterated it with one strike. But Lena herself stood very still, staring at the aftermath with narrowed eyes. Her sword strike alone should not have been enough to kill a B-rank creature. Something, or someone, had hit that drake at the exact same moment she did. She turned her gaze toward the rooftop where Soren stood, and she did not look away. The system celebrated with another chime. The charge punch was real. The power was real. Soren stood there laughing like a man who had just discovered a superpower by accident, which was more or less exactly what had happened. Principal Unseld arrived to greet Lena formally, launching into a practice speech about the Academy's pride and gratitude. Before he could finish, the system issued a new mission. Achieve the feat of shouting "I love you" at Lena 100 times. Soren stared at the notification. He stared at Lena. He stared back at the notification. Lena raised a hand, cutting off the principal, and asked Soren directly what his name was. "I love you," Soren said. The room froze. Lena asked again whether he was the one who delivered the final blow to the fire drake. "I love you. I love you. I love you." Someone shouted for security. Someone else said the boy had completely lost his mind. Soren kept going, faster now, each declaration stacking toward 100, each one landing like a small explosion in the middle of the most serious moment of the day. Leon pulled Rosa aside and muttered something cruel about a useless dead weight chasing a swan. Soren registered this, filed it away, and kept counting. At 4 to 7, Lena grabbed him by the collar. They rose into the sky together, up and up, above the rooftops, above the clouds, to a height that made the Academy look like a toy. Then she said, "If you can say I love you 50 times before you hit the ground, I will believe you." And she let go. The ground rushed up. Soren's heart hammered. His mouth moved faster than his brain could process. "I love you. I love you. I love you." 50 declarations screamed into the open air on the way down at terminal velocity. Lena caught him at the last possible second, tossed him back through the office window, and told the principal goodbye. She paused before leaving and produced a single card, a Chianfo Academy admission pass. Whoever placed first in the upcoming student trial, she said, would receive her personal guidance in acquiring a classless skill. A classless skill, one anyone could learn regardless of their class, with the kind of prize elite academies guarded carefully. Then she was gone. Soren counted the remaining love confessions in his head, still 3 short of 100. The Academy buzzed with what had just happened. The fire drake, the rooftop push-ups, the boy falling from the sky screaming declarations of love. No one knew what to make of any of it, but the day was far from over, and Soren had debts to collect on. The first of those debts had a name and a face, Jack, the Academy's most notorious bully, built like a wall and twice as mean. A group of his crew was waiting at the dorm entrance, blocking the path, demanding the 1,000-coin protection fee the original Soren had been dodging for months. Soren had been quietly charging his fist the entire walkover. He threw the punch. Jack went flying down the hallway. His crew stood frozen. The hallway went silent except for the sound of Jack hitting the wall and sliding down it. A 5-hour charge on the charge punch, Soren noted, was enough to send a freshly awakened tank warrior airborne. Good to know. Jack, sprawled on the floor with a swelling cheek and genuine terror in his eyes, apologized immediately and completely. Soren crouched down and asked, calmly, whether Jack knew anyone named Jill. Jack did not. Then go find her, Soren said. The day you bring Jill to me is the day I forgive you. Jack swore on his life he would find Jill, and somehow, from that moment forward, he was loyal. The next morning brought the student trial, a joint competition across 3 academies. Held inside a newly discovered space node. Form teams of 3 to 5, the principal announced. Performance in this trial directly impacts your college entrance exam results in 1 month. The problem was immediate. Nobody wanted Soren on their team. A classless student had no class to contribute, no skills anyone could count on, no reason to be chosen over anyone else in the field. The crowd sorted itself into groups around him, and he stood there, unclaimed. A helicopter broke the silence above the field. A figure in green dropped from it and landed cleanly, introducing himself as Akhenaten, a transfer from the first academy. He began a speech that sounded remarkably humble. He could not promise he was the most gifted, or the most handsome, or the funniest, or the best in any particular category. The crowd leaned in, genuinely moved by the modesty. "My name is Akhenaten," he finished. "I am here for Lena, and first place will be mine." Every warm feeling in the crowd evaporated at once. He had been flexing the entire time. The principal suggested Akhenaten pair with Soren to at least give the classless student a fighting chance of surviving. Akhenaten looked at Soren with open contempt and said he did not team with weaklings. He worked alone. Soren ended up with Jack, newly converted from bully to devoted follower, and a quiet boy named Rylan, who had awakened as a warrior, but refused to team with anyone. There was a reason for that. As it turned out, Ryland's class was a pretty warrior, a transformation-based class that shifted his appearance and amplified his power, but also sent his temper completely out of control. The moment he transformed into a stunning girl with long purple hair, he could not stop himself from lashing out at anyone nearby. He demonstrated this on Soren, who went sailing across the trial zone entrance and declared, while still in the air, that they were going to be great friends. The 3 of them entered the trial zone without anyone else willing to join them. Inside, the air felt different, a faint pulse of energy running through everything. The kind of place that did not let you forget it was dangerous. They found their first target quickly enough, a pair of scarlet boars rooting through the undergrowth. Lowest tier monsters, textbook enemies, a perfect first kill for a fresh team. None of them wanted to go first. Soren pointed at Jack. Jack pointed at Soren. Rylan pointed at Jack. Eventually, Jack was physically shoved forward and dispatched both boars without difficulty. Then the ground began to shake. Jack's hidden trait, monster magnet constitution, meant that every time he attacked a monster type, every other monster of that type in the area locked onto him instantly. Every scarlet boar in the entire trial zone was now charging toward them in a single thundering herd. Somewhere deeper in the zone, Rose's team watched their own targets turn and sprint away in the opposite direction. Her leveling efficiency dropping to nothing. She watched them disappear and made a quiet calculation. Back at Soren's position, the herd was closing fast. Jack and Rylan were already sprinting. Soren stopped running. He planted his feet, turned to face the wave, and let light gather slowly in the palm of his hand. One charged punch, released into the front of the herd. The impact rolled through them like a shockwave. Every last scarlet boar hit the ground. In the faculty office, the ranking board updated. First place Soren, second academy, 98 points. No one in the room recognized the name. The other principals stared at the board. One demanded a system error check. Another laughed at the second academy's principal before going quiet. Back in the trial zone, the surrounding area was empty now. Every scarlet boar within range had been wiped out in a single blow. The team pressed deeper into the zone, looking for new targets. What they found instead was something no one had expected. The zone itself was changing. Somewhere deep inside, 2 men had activated a hidden mechanism left behind thousands of years ago, and whatever they had triggered was rewriting the rules of the space around them. Rank 1 monsters across the entire zone began transforming, their bodies expanding, their auras darkening, their strength doubling in seconds. What had been a Rank 1 trial zone was now a Rank 2 trial zone, and no one inside knew it yet. The first sign came when a headshot chicken, normally the weakest 1-star monster around, charged at a group with the force of something far more dangerous. Principal Harlow's son Harkin had brought his team to that same area, booking out the territory with the confidence of someone who had never once been wrong about his own importance. He charged the nearest target with a grin and then screamed, "Fall back!" Before the words had finished leaving his mouth, the monster he had charged was now Rank 2, a giant fang beast. The pressure from it hit Harkin like a physical wall and dropped him to the ground. He scrambled up and sprinted without looking back. A girl named Yeva, who had attached herself to his group with calculated flattery, grabbed at his sleeve asking to be taken along. Harkin shook her off without slowing down. She told him she could not walk. He kicked her aside and kept running. Before leaving, Harkin reached into his jacket and pulled out a glowing green orb, a monster lure, the kind that redirects every nearby monster's aggression onto a single target. He threw it straight at Soren. Soren caught it, turned it over in his hands, and had about 2 seconds to understand what it was before the system flashed a notification. Rage meter rising. Harkin called back something sarcastic about luck running out, then disappeared into the trees. The giant fang beast was already moving. It hit Soren and sent him crashing across the ground. Jack stepped forward. Rylan grabbed him. "This one is mine," Rylan said, and the white light came. The chubby boy in front of Jack disappeared, replaced by a girl with an axe and murder in her eyes. Rylan unleashed a skill that stopped the beast in its tracks, buying exactly enough time for everyone to move. Yeva, still on the ground where Harkin had left her, grabbed Soren's sleeve and begged to be taken along. He told her flatly that she had just called him worthless. She dropped to her knees and apologized with everything she had. The chaos deepened as more giant fang beasts closed in from multiple directions. Rylan was being pushed back, breathing hard, each block costing more than the last. Soren stepped forward and planted himself in front of his teammate. Then he poured every drop of rage he had built up, from Harkin, from Rosa, from Leon, from every humiliation the original body had ever endured, into a single strike. Rage burst. The giant fang beast hit the ground and went still. Jack screamed with excitement. One punch, one dead ranked a monster. More were closing in. Soren stood in the middle of the encirclement, rage meter nearly empty, and started digging through his memories. Not battle memories, petty memories. The Wi-Fi cutting out during a final boss fight. Someone eating his leftovers from the fridge. A delivery app marking a package as delivered when nothing showed up. Stepping on a Lego at 3 in the morning. The rage meter climbed back to full. Golden light wrapped around him. He drove his fist into the next beast's jaw and sent it flying back several meters in pieces. In the faculty office, the principals were staring at the screen again. First place, Soren, 208 points, a massive lead over second place. The principal, who had been laughing, went quiet. The one who had demanded an error check made a different sound. "Something is wrong with the trial grounds," came the report. "The Rank 1 zone has mutated into a Rank 2 zone. Every Rank 1 monster inside has become Rank 2. Teachers cannot enter. The entry conditions still require sub-Rank 1 status." The principal sat with this for a moment. Then one of them pointed out what Soren's rising score actually implied. The only way to gain that many points that fast was to kill Rank 2 monsters. Silence. Deeper in the zone, the top elite prodigy across all 3 academies, Diane, Shadow Assassin class, was already fighting. She had found a Rank 2 giant fang beast on her own and was holding her ground, but barely. Shadow Assassin was one of the most powerful combat classes in existence. One of humanity's 9-star sovereigns had risen through that same class. And Diane, the best of her generation, could only manage a draw against the beast in front of her. A crowd of stranded students watched from a safe distance, paralyzed by the gap in strength. Faye Sparks, 3rd Academy's top elite prodigy, second only to Diane in raw power, was among them, explaining in detail why nobody could possibly one-shot a Rank 2 monster. If someone managed that, she announced, she would call them daddy. More giant fang beasts came charging in before anyone could respond. Diane split her focus, holding one beast while the other wheeled toward the retreating crowd. Someone in the crowd shouted at Faye to hold the second beast. Faye stared at it, drained of color, muttered something about being 3rd Academy's top elite prodigy, and charged. She came sprinting back moments later, bruised and swollen. Soren muttered something under his breath and stepped forward. He pulled back and swung, rage meter still carrying just enough for one more burst. The beast went flying. Golden light wrapped around Soren as he straightened up. Then a wave of dizziness hit, and he went down. When he opened his eyes, he told the people gathered around him, calmly, like it was an ordinary thing, that he thought he had just reached Rank 2. Diane, who had been fighting monsters at the apex of Rank 1 strength all day, stared at him. He had broken through to Rank 2 without entering a star tower. Every awakened who wanted to advance beyond Rank 1 had to enter the class's star tower, a brutally dangerous solo trial that killed countless talented fighters every year. Soren had no class. He had no star tower. He had simply crossed the threshold without one, while everyone else was still working up the courage to try. Diane told him she had never considered anyone a true rival before. She told him she would see him at the Grand Human Exam. Then she walked away. Soren looked at his group, told them they needed to find the exit, and kept moving. Faye Sparks materialized at his side, completely reversing everything she had said earlier, and announced she had spent her whole life searching for someone worthy to follow. She asked if she could call him Saifu. Soren told her to do whatever she wanted and kept walking. The bronze gate stood at the far end of the realm, behind it the exit teleporter array. A crowd of students was already packed in front of it, none of them able to open it. The gate required a rank to awaken to activate it, and until a minute ago, no one in the zone had been ranked 2. Diane was still fighting her way through. The crowd was waiting on her. Wave crawlers were closing in from behind. Someone from 3rd Academy had started pushing 2nd Academy students toward the front, demanding they take the monsters while 3rd Academy held the inside. Soren told the crowd to step aside. The crowd did not move. A boy called number 10, the 2nd elite prodigy of 3rd Academy, looked at Soren like he was a joke. Faye walked up and hit number 10 twice across the face before anyone could blink. Soren walked to the bronze gate. He tried several things. None of them were the correct method, but he was ranked 2 now, and ranked 2 was the only requirement. The gate opened. The crowd erupted. Diane stood frozen in disbelief. Leon announced on the spot that if this actually worked, he would shave his head on a live stream. He had not finished speaking before the gate was open. Students poured through and walked directly into the gaze of something that had been waiting in the dark on the other side. The Spider Queen, a ranked boss. Boss-level monsters only appear in rank 3 and above in-game dungeons. What one was doing here, no one could explain. She moved before anyone could react, a leg shooting out like a spear, pinning a student, pulling them toward her jaws. The crowd that had just celebrated its escape turned and ran straight back into the monster-filled zone they had come from. Ranked monsters behind, a ranked boss ahead, no exit, no teachers who could get inside to help. Diane charged the Spider Queen and was knocked flat instantly. Soren caught her. He looked at the Spider Queen. He looked at the monsters behind. The rage meter was charging. He stepped forward and drove a fist into one of her legs. The Spider Queen recoiled, actually recoiled, which no one in the room had expected. "You actually hurt me," she said, her voice shifting from amusement to something colder. That hit had cost Soren nearly everything left in his rage meter, and it had only damaged one leg. This was bad. Someone in the crowd was using monster lures, drawing every beast's attention toward random students, trying to thin the herd by sacrificing the weak. The Spider Queen described it as someone seasoning her food. Soren stood in the middle of it all, thinking he could not release 10,000 donkeys into a packed crowd. They would trample everyone before the monsters even arrived. 10,000 donkeys. The system reward from completing 100 declarations of love to Lena had been exactly that, 10,000 donkeys, each possessing the individual skill kicked in the head and the group skill stampede. He had not used them yet. He told Rylan and Jack to channel their power into him. Then he raised his hand toward the ceiling of the realm. "Donkeys, come." The sky opened. Thousands upon thousands of hooves came raining down from above. The Spider Queen looked up, confused, then furious, as the herd hit her directly. The ranked boss, an S-rank creature that the combined might of the students could barely scratch, was trampled to the ground by donkeys. The crowd stood in stunned silence, watching. Somewhere on the other side of the teleporter array, 2 men who had been trying to retrieve a hidden item from the ruins watched the light from the array activate. A lord named Ro waited impatiently outside. What came through the portal first was a donkey, then several more donkeys, then the herd. Lord Ro was trampled before he could ask a single question. Back inside the zone, every rank 2 monster had been reduced to the same fate. The students came staggering out through the teleporter one by one, alive and deeply confused. Outside, the faculty was debating who had turned the tide. Diane said it was not her. Faye said, technically, she had not really done anything either. It was Soren. The 2nd Academy principal stood very still for a moment, then broke into the widest grin he had shown in years. The other principals had nothing to say. One of them had promised to hand over 3rd Academy's access to the formless realm, a restricted space that opened once a year if a classless student turned out to be the one who saved everyone. He had said it as a joke. He was already being held to it. Soren received his reward screen, adventure rating S1 God Slayer point earned. Item received, Spider Queen's Venom. God Slayer points, he was told, were awarded only when performance was absolutely flawless. Students at top academies went through their entire enrollment without earning a single one. He had earned his first on the first trial of his first day, and somewhere far away, in a place crawling with monsters far deadlier than anything in the trial zone, a woman named Lena was standing over a rank-4 boss she had just cut to pieces. She was being informed of a student named Soren. The name rang a bell, and not a pleasant one. But when she heard that this same classless student had broken the all-time trial record, held by the Stormcaller himself, she went still. And when her assistant showed her footage confirming that Soren was also the one who had killed the Pharaoh God's fourth son, her expression shifted into something more serious than anger. The Pharaoh God never forgave. His fourth son had plagued humanity for decades. Whoever killed him had just painted a target on their back that no ordinary protection could erase. Lena made a decision quietly, the way she made all her decisions, and started moving. Back at the academy, the principal gathered everyone for a class meeting. Soren's reward from the Star Tower Alliance, access to the Formless Realm, and a personal session with Lena to acquire a classless skill. The three academies had jointly opened demon zones for pre-exam training, and class attendance was suspended for the next month. Go out, form teams, get stronger. The Grand Human exam was 30 days away. That same day, the system issued a new quest. Achieve the Legacy Bloom milestone. Obtain 3 descendants. Contribute to the survival of humanity. Soren read this twice and then asked the system if it was serious. The system confirmed it was genuinely professional and did not joke, unless it could not help itself. He told the system to give him a different quest. The system said that once a quest was issued, it could not be changed. Soren closed his eyes, thought about this for a long moment, and decided the most efficient interpretation was to accept disciples. Akhenaten cornered him in the hallway before he could get far. The message was simple: stay away from Lena. Soren listened, nodded, and offered to sell Akhenaten the classless skill slot instead. Akhenat's expression cycled through suspicion, desire, and finally surrender. The price was one word. Master. Akhenaten said it. The system chimed. 1 descendant gained. Legacy Bloom progress 2 of 3. Faye Sparks was next. She materialized at his side, breathless. Having sprinted across campus the moment she heard he was looking for her. The system chimed before she finished catching her breath. Legacy Bloom complete. Skill acquired. Bucket dash. When activated while holding a bucket, this skill multiplied movement speed by 10 or more. Soren stared at the notification for a long moment. Then he put it aside and headed toward his uncle's house. He had not visited once since arriving in this world, and the original body's memories carried a specific kind of weight around that address. The weight of someone who had grown up with relatives who tolerated him just long enough to make sure they were not blamed for anything. What he did not know was that his aunt and uncle had already decided this visit would be the last. They had been throwing his belongings into the hallway before he arrived. His uncle wavered. His aunt did not. She had a daughter named Yuna, and Yuna was dating Harkin, the same Harkin from the dungeon. Principal Harlow's son. The presence of a classless, disgraced cousin was bad for appearances. Soren arrived to find Harkin already there. Harkin recognized Soren immediately. The one who had survived the monster lure attack in the dungeon. The one who had embarrassed him in front of witnesses. He told Soren to disappear. Soren answered with a punch to the jaw that sent Harkin across the room. What followed was not a fight so much as a demonstration. Harkin could not land a single hit, not one. He could not process it. He screamed about banned substances. He insisted the power was artificial, a temporary surge from something illegal. Soren hit him again. Something unexpected happened in the background of all this. Soren's uncle, who had spent his whole life meek and agreeable, stood up. He told Soren not to back down. He told him that a man should live like one. He said he had once wanted to fight for humanity, and that his domestic awakening class had taken that dream from him. But looking at Soren, he saw the man he had once wanted to be. Don't let it go, the uncle said. I've got your back, kid. Harkin, on the floor and calculating, performed the one option he had left. He submitted, completely, loudly, dramatically, apologizing for the monster lore, swearing on his father's name, pledging never to pull anything like it again. The ant and Yuna stood frozen. Hearken, the moment Soren turned away, decided privately that whatever Soren had taken would wear off, and when it did, he would finish this. Then the Star Tower broadcast activated. These broadcasts were rare. The last one had been for Lena killing a 5-star boss. It was a public ranking announcement for the East River Province trial results. First place, Soren. Second, Academy. Yuna went pale. Her mother went paler. Harkin stood in the middle of the room reading the screen and went quiet in a very different way. He talked about introducing himself to Soren when the time came, about how an elite prodigy like this had limitless potential. He suggested gently that perhaps Yuna and her mother might also want to be introduced. The aunt looked at the ranking. She looked at the door Soren had walked out of. Not necessary, Soren said from outside. The principal arrived moments later to personally deliver the Alliance's reward. A direct placement at Solaris Academy, the top institution in the Dragon District. No more than 3 placements were handed out per year across the entire exam cycle. Soren had just been given one without sitting the exam. He told the principal he would have preferred a nice house. The principal explained, with controlled patience, that Lena was at Solaris Academy. Soren mentioned he had sold the classless skill slot to Akhenaten. The principal's expression went through several stages. The system, impeccably timed, issued a new quest. Complete ranked dungeons 10 times within 10 hours. Soren gathered his team and headed back to the Spider Queen's lair. Outside, a crowd had gathered at the entrance. The dungeon's updated rating was now posted clearly. Level requirement ranked it to rank 3. Player requirement 40. Large-scale group raid dungeon. Soren walked past the crowd with Jack and Rylan and went in. Jack activated his monster magnet constitution in an open patch of ground. The herd came. 10,000 donkeys came faster. The dungeon's entire population was stamped flat in minutes. Outside, the crowd stared at the exit portal lighting up. 7 minutes and 28 seconds. New record. Someone said they must have used a realm break stone to skip out early. The congratulations announcement from the Star Tower corrected them. The dungeon had been cleared. In 7 minutes and 28 seconds, the crowd recalibrated their entire understanding of what was happening. They went back in. 6 minutes and 18 seconds the second time. Then again. Outside, a 4-star scion named Uncle Dex, sent by Lord Ro to handle the problem cleanly and professional. Watched them walk back in for the 10th time and decided they would not be coming out. He opened a live stream to Lord Ro and prepared to broadcast the kill. Inside, the Spider Queen had begun to remember. Monsters in a realm should not retain memories between respawns, but the Spider Queen did, and at the end of the 10th clear, she was no longer simply angry. She was deliberate. With my soul, my bones, my blood, my flesh, she said, I lay the curse of despair upon the one behind all of this. Kill the one who stands closest to you, or die yourself. The system notified Soren immediately. He was now under attack from the curse of despair. He asked the system to break the curse. The system said that fell outside the scope of system services. Soren told Jack and Rylan to run, as far as they could, as fast as possible. The curse would make him kill whoever was closest. Jack refused to move. If someone had to die, he said, let it be him. He asked only one thing. When Soren became the 9-star sovereign someday, don't forget him. Bring him back. It was the kind of loyalty that came from somewhere genuine, and it landed harder than any punch. But it was too late to argue. Uncle Dex had arrived. He moved like a bolt, covering the distance between them in an instant, landing the strike that Soren had no time to dodge. Then the curse of despair activated. Kill the one standing closest to me. Uncle Dex had just put himself right next to Soren to deliver the killing blow. The curse did not distinguish between ally and enemy. It only counted distance. Uncle Dex collapsed before the word he was saying left his lips. Evil always turns on itself, Soren thought. He picked up Uncle Dex's phone and answered the call that came through immediately after. Lord Ro was on the other end, voice bright with satisfaction, asking for the update. Soren said hello. The satisfaction drained out instantly. Who are you? Lord Ro asked. Where is Uncle Dex? Your uncle is dead, Soren said, and I know everything. The assassins, the monster lore, the key you want inside my body. Lord Ro explained, calmly now. What the key was, a relic from a powerful spatial rift mudge who had trained in that trial realm thousands of years ago. One that unlocked a set of ancient ruins set to unseal after the college exams. Without the key, he waited another 100 years. So, one of us walks away and the other doesn't, Lord Rowe said. Soren said, "Did you get all of that?" Every word, Ryland confirmed. The entire conversation had been recorded. The Rowe family assaulting students, attempted murder. All of it was going straight to the Star Tower Alliance. Lord Rowe went quiet. He knew the Alliance would launch an investigation. He also knew his family had enough influence to bury it eventually. But for now, open moves against Soren were off the table. The ruins would unseal after the exams. Lord Rowe would be waiting. On the other side of the Empire, at Solaris Academy, Lena was sitting through a presentation of gifts and love letters sent by students, hoping to get her attention. Her phone rang. It was Soren. "Lena," he said, "I love you." The auditorium full of students went completely silent. "I love you. I love you. 100%. Quest complete." The auditorium did not stay silent for long. "Who is this person?" someone shouted. "Find him right now." Lena raised a hand for quiet. "His name is Soren," she said, voice perfectly calm. "He is my boyfriend." The auditorium exploded. Lena had never admitted to having anyone. The idea that she was taken by someone from a mid-tier academy, no less, was incomprehensible to the people in that room. But Lena was already thinking ahead. With Soren as her boyfriend on record, her life would get significantly quieter. A useful arrangement. She memorized the name and moved on. The 10th dungeon clear triggered the quest completion notification. Achievement unlocked. 10 ranked dungeon clears within 10 hours. Skill acquired, disrobe. This skill instantly strips a random piece of clothing from the target and transfers it directly to the user. Soren stared at this for a long time. He ranked up again during the clears. Skull-splitting headache. Same as every time. Same climbing intensity, and this time the result read rank 4. From classless and 0 on awakening day to rank 4 in less than 2 weeks, without a star tower, without a class, without any conventional path. The quest reward was a skill to steal people's clothes. The system's sense of priorities remained its own. The principal gathered everyone again. Additional demon zones had opened for pre-exam training. 3 locations, all accessible to students. Soren took one look at the announcement and gathered his team. Not the demon zones. Back to the ranked dungeon, 10 more clears, same as before. Jack activated his trait. The herd came. The donkeys came faster. The crowd outside watched the completion announcement appear and stopped pretending they understood what was happening. But not everyone watching was there to be impressed. Lord Rowe had updated his Shadowmark subscription to premium tier, unlocking a free 6-star rated assassin. With the Alliance investigation active, open confrontation was too risky. They would wait until the exam period. Lord Rowe intended to handle the rest personally. Elsewhere, in a location Soren had no knowledge of, the feral cult was kneeling before a projection. The presence radiating through it made the air in the room shake. The feral god had received a report. His 4th son, who had plagued humanity for decades, feared even by B-rank fighters, was dead. The feral god was furious in the way that only something ancient and powerful can be, quiet, absolute, and without interest in explanations. Find out who did this. Report back. Divine judgment will fall. The cult bowed lower and began their search. What they found pointed to a student at a mid-tier academy. Classless, 18 years old. Name, Soren. The feral cult dispatched a team to Haven Township, where students from all 3 academies were training before the exam. Soren arrived at Haven Township with his group and stood at the edge of what had once been a functioning community. The demon tide zone had descended without warning, a spatial node tearing open. In the middle of a prosperous little town, demon beasts flooding through in an instant. Almost no one made it out. What was left was a reminder of exactly what was at stake. Not rankings, not points, not class prestige, but something more fundamental than any of it. Survival. They were still surveying the area when the ambush hit. 3rd attack in 3 days. Soren took the punch, absorbed the momentum, and put his attacker through the air with a single response strike. The attackers looked at each other and recalibrated immediately. Their intelligence had been completely wrong about this target. The force in that punch exceeded what most academy principals could generate. "Are you from Lord Rowe?" Soren asked. "We serve the great feral god," the lead attacker said. "You killed his 4th son, and today you pay for it?" The feral cult. Soren's group braced. Then the system notification arrived. Defeating feral cult members earned military merit. Soren's expression shifted. Back at Solaris Academy, Lena was already moving toward the exit before her assistant finished speaking. Her master had warned her the Pharaoh god would have his eyes on Soren soon, and the Alliance alone could not protect someone without backing from the cult's retaliation. She told her master it was not about the Pharaoh god. She was settling the score. Her master watched her leave and noted privately that she had never once, in all her years, gone out of her way for any man. At Solaris Academy, Akhenaten was still waiting to receive the classless skill that he had paid for with one embarrassing word. Lena had asked where Soren was. Akhenaten said Soren did not want to come and had sold the slot. The temperature in the room dropped. Lena turned and walked away without another word. Her assistant told Akhenaten to go home. The slot belonged to first place. Soren needed to show up himself. Outside Solaris Academy, a group connected to someone called Lord Vane was waiting. They had a photo of Soren and instructions to make an example of him. Akhenaten walked through the door first. They moved on him immediately. Akhenaten took the entire beating before they realized they had the wrong person. They showed each other the photo, confirmed the mismatch, and left without a word. Akhenaten sat on the steps outside Solaris Academy, spent a significant amount of money to learn nothing, and took a free beating. He had truly not gotten anything out of this trip. Inside, a different group, the Pharaoh cult's intelligence branch, had confirmed Soren's identity and his connection to the Pharaoh god's fourth son. They were calculating the best window to move on him. The exam period was approaching. The ruins would unseal after. Every faction with an interest in Soren was counting down to the same date. Back in the Demon Zone near Haven Township, the Pharaoh cult's assault team had engaged. These were not hired assassins or academy bullies. These were fanatics, trained fighters, who believed that killing Soren would earn them the blessing of a divine being and carry them to something beyond ordinary existence. They hit hard and coordinated, and they did not stop when the first wave went down. Soren's rage meter was building. The team around him held formation, Jack absorbing pressure, Rylan finding angles, Fate catching stragglers. Soren hit the center of the formation like a battering ram, military merit accumulating with every cultist taken down. The fight was brutal and brief and left no ambiguity about its outcome. When the last attacker went down, Soren stood in the quiet of a ruined town and took stock of everything closing in on him. The Rowe family, waiting for the ruins to unseal. The Pharaoh cult, preparing for the next attempt. Lord Vane and his people, already active at Solaris Academy. The Pharaoh god himself, with his attention now fixed on a classless 18-year-old. From a mid-tier academy, at 1 month from today, the Grand Human Exam. Soren looked at his team. Everyone was breathing hard, but upright. He called up the system. No new quest, no new mission, just the weight of everything building toward a single point. He thought about Lena moving somewhere across the Empire, for reasons she would probably deny. He thought about Diane, who had told him she was his rival and walked away like she expected him to be there. When she looked again, he thought about the Stormcaller, somewhere in a demon zone so deadly even Nansar sovereigns thought twice before entering, who had heard Soren's name and said, "No need to investigate, every person's path is their own." Direct entry to Solaris Academy, granted without sitting an exam. The Stormcaller's recommendation, quietly placed. Very few people in the history of this world had ever been classless. Before the Star Tower descended, the Stormcaller had told the Alliance, every human being was classless. What Soren was, the system that had claimed him, the power building inside him with every rank up, the key now embedded in his body, none of it fit any category the world had built for itself. The Grand Human Exam was 30 days away. The ruins would unseal after it. 3 factions were already positioned against him, and Soren, who had arrived in this world doing push-ups on a rooftop while a dragon attacked, was starting to look less like a man caught in something bigger than himself, and more like the center of it. He went back to the dungeon. There was still training to do. Jack was already warming up his trait. Rylan was checking his axe form. Fate was writing something in a notebook she refused to show anyone. Somewhere across the city, Lord Rowe was calculating his next move. Somewhere at Solaris Academy, Akhenaten was filing a formal complaint about the beating. And somewhere between the mid-tier academies and the highest seats of power in the Empire, a name that had not existed 2 weeks ago was being written into files and watch lists, and private conversations that no ordinary student would ever know about. Soren, no class, no rank assigned. That was what the official Star Tower publication said. What it did not say was what the Stormcaller had added, quietly, before leaving. Since the Star Tower descended, this young man may be the first true classless person to ever exist. The distinction mattered. Not classless because the system failed to assign a class. Classless by nature, by design, as if the rules of this world had been written around something. And that something had just woken up. The exam approached. The ruins waited. Soren finished another dungeon clear, time still dropping, Donkey still reliable, Spider Queen still furious and still trapped in her respawn cycle. He walked out into the light and let the system tally the results. New skill unlocked from the dungeon reward, Spider Queen's Tear, a venom compound with properties the system described in terms he filed away for later. He was ranked for now, in a world where most Awakened never reached rank 2. He had done it without a class, without a star tower, without a single conventional step. Every faction watching him had underestimated what that meant. Lord Rowe had sent 5-star assassins and lost them. Then he had sent a 4-star Scion and watched the man die to a monstrous curse in the same moment. He tried to deliver the killing blow. The Pharaoh cult had sent a trained assault team and left with military merit on Soren's record. Lord Vane's people had beaten up the wrong person. Every approach had failed not because Soren had outplanned them, but because the world around him kept bending in ways that none of them had modeled for. That was the part no one understood yet. The system was not just giving Soren power, it was giving him power through the most absurd possible channels, push-ups, love confessions, donkeys, bucket dashes, and clothes-stealing abilities, and every single one of them had worked. There was a logic to it, buried somewhere under the chaos. Every mission had been designed to put him exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what needed to happen, in a form nobody would ever see coming. He had saved an entire trial zone with farm animals. He had broken the all-time record of the Empire's greatest known hero, with a punch charged by petty grievances. He had ended the ambitions of a 4-star Scion through a dead monster's vengeance. None of it looked like heroism from the outside. It looked like a boy stumbling forward through a world that could not decide whether to destroy him or hand him everything. From the inside, it felt exactly the same. The difference was that Soren had stopped waiting for it to resolve. He had planted his feet in front of the Fire Drake, in front of the Spider Queen, in front of Harkin and the assassins and the cult. Not because he was fearless, because the system kept sending him missions, and the missions kept requiring him to be exactly there, doing exactly that. And somewhere along the way, showing up had become its own kind of strength. The principal sent a message that evening. Preparations for the Grand Human exam had been finalized. Second Academy would enter with priority access, courtesy of the trial ranking. Soren would attend with his direct placement already secured. But the exam was not just a ranking event. It was the threshold. After the exam, the ruins would unseal. The key inside Soren's body would activate, and every faction that had been circling, Rowe, Vane, the Pharaoh cult, and whatever the Pharaoh god was planning from beyond the projection, would have their window. 30 days. He looked at his team. Jack, who had come in as a bully and stayed as something closer to a brother. Rylan, whose transformation class hid a temper and a loyalty that ran equally deep. Faye, who had called him Saifu after one fight and apparently meant every word. Akhenaten, somewhere across the city, probably still complaining. And Lena, moving fast in the direction she had not announced, for reasons she would not explain, toward a mid-tier academy student that she kept insisting had nothing to do with her plans. Whatever was coming, it was going to happen at the exam. Every thread that had been running since the day Soren stepped onto that platform, and the system returned nothing. All of it was pulling toward the same point. He closed the dungeon interface and looked up at the sky above Haven Township. 30 days to get ready for what came next. And what came next was the kind of thing that did not announce itself until it was already on top of you. The Grand Human exam began at dawn. 3 academies filing in under banners that represented 100 years of accumulated pride. Diane was already positioned near the front, shadow assassin class radiating quiet menace. Eyes on the entrance and nowhere else. She had spent a month preparing to meet Soren across a competition stage, and her preparation had been absolute. Faye Sparks arrived beside Soren's group and matched their pace without asking for permission. She had not gone home once in the past 30 days. She had trained and watched and kept her notebook close. The exam unfolded in stages, dungeon clearances, combat assessments, and individual trials, each one escalating in difficulty as the bracket narrowed. Soren moved through the early rounds the way he moved through everything, without elegance, without visible strategy, with one charged punch that solved most problems and 10,000 donkeys that solved the rest. The faculty from all three academies had given up trying to classify what they were watching. The system, for its part, kept issuing missions, each one stranger than the last, each one precisely placed to put Soren exactly where he needed to be. By the time the bracket reached the final stage, the leaderboard had resolved into something no one had predicted. Soren at the top, dying one step behind, the gap between them larger than anything the exam administrators had recorded in 300 years. In the stands, Lord Rowe watched through proxies, calculating. Vane's people were positioned at the exits. The Pharaoh cult had 3 members confirmed inside the grounds under false academy credentials. Lord Rowe had been patient. The ruins would unseal within hours of the exam's conclusion. The key was inside the boy. The boy would be exhausted and exposed. This was the window. But that was only the beginning of what happened next. The ruins unsealed before the exam officially ended. Not in a day, not in an hour. The key inside Soren's body activated the moment the final trial concluded, and a shockwave rolled out from his position across the entire exam grounds. Every awakened present felt it, a pressure that had nothing to do with any class or skill, or rank anyone in the room had ever encountered. Lord Rowe moved first, breaking cover, driving through the crowd toward the source. The Pharaoh cult moved simultaneously from 3 angles. Vane's people came from the exits, and then Lena arrived. She came through the wall, not the door, the wall. Blade drawn, aura expanded to a radius that dropped every attacker in her path before they could decide whether to engage. She crossed the distance to Soren's position in 3 steps and turned to face everything coming from the outside. Nobody moved. Lord Rowe, 3 steps away, looked at the sword and stopped. He had called himself a dragon when threatening Soren. He recognized what was in front of him now, and he did not call it anything. Lena told him, calmly, that the Star Tower Alliance's investigation into the Rowe family's conduct had concluded. The report had been escalated that morning. The Rowe family's protections were not what they had been a month ago. Lord Rowe had run the calculations wrong. He had assumed the Alliance would bury the evidence. He had not accounted for the weight of what Soren's record had become. By the time the investigation landed, breaking the Stormcaller's record, clearing a ranked dungeon in under 8 minutes, killing the Pharaoh God's 4th son, a direct placement from Solaris Academy. You did not quietly bury evidence against someone the Stormcaller had personally flagged for placement. Lord Rowe took a step back. The Pharaoh cult did not. They came forward anyway, because they were fanatics, and fanatics do not recalculate at the last moment. What happened in the next 90 seconds was not a fight. It was the difference between a person who had spent a month training by clearing ranked dungeons 10 times a day and a group of people who had spent that same month planning. Lena handled the cult. Soren handled the key. The ruins opened. What was inside had been waiting not for Lord Rowe, not for the Rowe family's ambitions, but for the specific resonance of someone carrying it, classless, unranked by any tower, following a path that did not exist in any system the world had built for itself. Soren walked through and came back out carrying something that the system did not have a category for. It would take time to understand what it was. That was the honest answer. But the ruins had opened for him, and only for him, and that meant something specific about what he was becoming. The exam results were posted that afternoon. First place, Soren. No class, no rank assigned. Direct entry to Solaris Academy confirmed. Below his name, a note from the Star Tower Alliance's Central Intelligence. God Slayer points accumulated in this examination cycle, unprecedented. The second Academy principal read the bulletin 3 times, and then sat down very quietly in his office. His academy had ranked first in the trial. His academy's student had broken the all-time exam record. His academy had a direct Solaris Academy placement for the first time in its history. He had been the principal of the weakest of the 3 academies for longer than he wanted to remember. He allowed himself exactly 1 moment of uncomplicated happiness. Soren stood outside the exam center with his team, the ruins closed behind him. The factions that had been circling now scattered or retreated. Lord Rowe had left quietly, carrying a weight that was no longer just about a key. The investigation had teeth now, and the Rowe family would spend the next year dealing with consequences, instead of planning the next move. Lena sheathed her sword and told Soren that he owed her for the wall. Soren said he thought boyfriends typically handled emergency extractions for free. Lena looked at him for a long moment. She said she would collect payment at Solaris Academy. Jack was already celebrating loudly enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear. Rylan stood next to him looking embarrassed, but also smiling. Faye had opened her notebook and was writing something with great satisfaction. Akhenaten appeared from somewhere, announced that his personal results in the exam had been excellent, and looked at Soren as if waiting for acknowledgement. Soren told him, "Well done, Master." Akhenaten paused for exactly 1 second, then nodded with great dignity and walked away. The system issued no new quest. For the first time since Soren had woken up in this world, the notification bar was quiet. He stood there in the afternoon light and thought about the man whose body he was borrowing. The one who had grown up with relatives who tolerated him. Who chased a girl for 2 years and bought her armor to get a verbal yes. Who had been laughed at publicly and lived with it quietly. That original Soren had wanted something simple. To matter, to be worth something, to stand somewhere and not be dismissed. He had not lived to see any of it. But the name had. The record was in the name. The placement was in the name. The Empire's eyes were on the name. Whatever debt the transmigrator owed to the life he had borrowed, this was part of the repayment. Solaris Academy was next. The Pharaoh god's attention had been confirmed, an ancient being whose cult spanned the world, whose fourth son was dead, whose patience would run out eventually regardless of how many investigations the Alliance opened. The key had opened a door that revealed something Soren could not yet read. The ruins had given him something the system had not categorized, and the system categorized everything. And the Stormcaller, somewhere in his demon zone, had told the Alliance months ago that classless was not a deficiency. It was a description of someone who existed before the categories were invented. Soren did not know what that made him yet. He suspected he would find out at Solaris Academy, surrounded by people who had spent their entire lives at the top of a system. He had entered through a hole in its logic. The team gathered around him, waiting. Jack asked if they were going back to grind dungeons before the academy transfer. Soren said probably. Rylan asked if there was any way to make the rank-up headache smaller. Soren said not that he had found. Faye closed her notebook and said she had documented everything and would have a full written record ready by the time they arrived at Solaris. Nobody had asked for that, but no one told her to stop. They walked away from the exam grounds together, through the streets of a city that had a Star Tower broadcast queued, with Soren's name at the top of it. Behind them, every faction that had come to end his story was already regrouping for the next chapter. Ahead of them was Solaris Academy, the highest institution in the Dragon District, home to Lena, watched by the Stormcaller, built on a tradition of exceptional people doing exceptional things. Soren had arrived in this world with nothing, done push-ups on a rooftop while a dragon attacked, and worked his way here through love confessions and donkey stampedes and a system that rewarded absurdity with power. He was rank 4. He was classless. He was carrying something from ancient ruins that the world's best minds could not yet identify, and every enemy watching him had made the same mistake. They had looked at what he did not have, and missed entirely what was building inside him. The classless path had no star tower to fail him, no class ceiling to stop him, no prescribed limits written into a system that predated everything he was. Whatever he was becoming, the world had not built a name for it yet, and that, more than the record, or the placement, or the ruins, or the enemies already circling Solaris Academy, was the most dangerous thing about Soren.